Hello and welcome to a Drip Dolphin anime review. I am the Drip Dolphin, and I have been wanting to discuss this one specific anime ever since it had finished its first season. A show that if you try to look at it objectively and then try to describe it to someone, you're probably not doing it any justice. The show that I would like to discuss today is Sasaki and Peeps. And with the second season being announced, I feel like now is a good time to discuss this strange and wonderful show. Having rewatched the show in its entirety to keep a fresh perspective, I can confidently say going in this that my thoughts on the show have not changed one bit. So let's break out the bird feed and put away our business suit because we're going straight in. Sasaki and Peeps is a light novel that started in December of 2018, made by an author under the pen name Bunko Lolly, a name that does not inspire confidence for reasons that any anime fan can tell you. Foreshadowing, perhaps? The light novel was later adapted into an anime in early of 2024. The story blends many different tropes found in different genres to make an almost fever dream-like show, but it never really plays it off as a fever dream. If anything, the show plays out everything fairly tame and by the books at each of its points that it wants to introduce the new elements to the story. Only after it has introduced those elements, and you have become familiar and comfortable with the different things happening to our main character, does it whip you into the blending of them. But I don't want to spoil what's to happen for those who want to watch it, which I recommend that you do. So if you have even the slightest interest in Sasaki and Peeps, you should stop here and go watch the entire first episode. But why only the first episode? I thought the rule of thumb was to watch the first 3 episodes and then decide, I hear you asking. Well, the creators of the show wanted to get the premise across to as many viewers as soon as possible. As a result, they made the first episode of this show 50 minutes long. And this episode gets a decent chunk of what the show is about across. Not everything, but most of it. So go watch it, possibly the whole show while you're at it. And then return to me and tell me how you felt trying to process everything that occurred. Then we can wait for the next season together to come out later this year, 2026. The show follows Sasaki, a 39-year-old salaryman, and just like every other adult that exists in anime, is burned out from his daily grind and wants to spice things up to bring some joy into his otherwise dull life. This results in the decision to adopt a pet to fill that boring gap in his heart. And while at his local pet store, he comes across a gray Java sparrow with a star pattern on its chest. Taken in by how adorable this bird is, he immediately brings it home and starts thinking of names for it. However, before coming up with one himself, the bird begins to speak fluent Japanese, or whatever language the dub is that you're watching, and informs Sasaki that not only does he already have a name, but it also has a title as well. Pierre Carlo, the Star Sage. Understandably confused by this declaration, Sasaki assumes that this bird is one of the kinds that can speak and just rolls with it. He even makes up an adorable nickname for Pierre Carlo and starts calling him P-chan, aka Peeps. Unamused but unwilling to fight the name now given to him, Peeps tells Sasaki that they are a reincarnation of a powerful being known as the Star Sage, who hailed from another world where magic exists, where Peeps was the most powerful user of magic that world had ever seen. However, the corrupt nobles that once relied on Peeps betrayed and killed the Star Sage, resulting in his reincarnation to our world. Now with Sasaki, who can act as his protege, Peeps uses his magic to transport them to his old world to teach him magic and go on adventures. It's at this point that the show plays out like your standard isekai, where Sasaki uses his advanced knowledge of modern days to make a name for himself by selling goods that can't be replicated in this world in order to make a profit and build relations with those in power. Sasaki and Peeps travel back and forth every day hauling the most advanced technologies that any medieval world could possibly want, such as paper, pens, chocolate, binoculars, and Swiss Army knives. Everything a growing kingdom could possibly need. The people he deals with start out somewhat small, with the vice manager of a trading company named Mark, leading him to meet the local Lord Viscount Mueller, after having impressed Mark with the wares and products he has shown him, which eventually leads Sasaki all the way up to meeting their king, after helping them with supply struggles involving the war that they are having with their neighboring nations. Using the magic that his pet mentor Peeps has been training him in, Sasaki becomes a trusted member of the kingdom with allies that treat him like family. Including a young chef who was fired unjustly from his previous cooking job, French. No, not a French chef, although that could definitely be the reason why he was fired. No, his name doesn't sound like a French name. The name given to him at birth is French. Ridiculous name aside, Sasaki decides to open a restaurant with French immediately after meeting him, using the capital that he gained from the sales with the local lord and merchant. All just because he wants to be able to eat good food while he's visiting this world. So Sasaki teaches French recipes he knows from his world to open this restaurant, causing it to be a booming success. Yes, Sasaki starts to really acclimate to his new life, jumping between worlds, meeting new people, training in the ways of the Star Sage, and making bank from all this middleman sales strats. Seriously, scalpers wish they could resell the way Sasaki does. Now at this point you may be wondering, Drip, where does the mixing of genres happen? To which I say, you should have watched the show already because you're such a good little boy, little girl, you should know what's coming next. We're not even halfway through the first episode. So, leading towards the second half of the first episode, Sasaki is back home in his world and leaves Peeps in his apartment while he goes out for drinks with his coworkers. While walking back, he comes across a man attacking a woman down a dark road. At first, Sasaki doesn't want to get involved, but then the man turns his arm into a freaking sword and is clearly trying to kill this woman. Thinking that a magic user from the other world must have somehow come over to our side, Sasaki decides to step in, focusing the magic that Peeps has been teaching him to launch an icicle spear into the shoulder of the assailant. This causes the ice to start spreading across the man uncontrollably, almost killing him. However, the woman he attacked somehow takes control of the ice surrounding the man and causes it to melt all to the floor. Shaken, she draws her gun and points it at Sasaki and asks one question.
あなた、どこの異能力者?
This is the point where Sasaki and Peeps turns into a supernatural detective show with secret government divisions, agents with psychic abilities, and an underground war. The tone becomes a bit darker as the woman Sasaki saved tries to explain who she is and what she does. Her name is Hoshizaki, and she is part of a secret government organization, the Paranormal Phenomena Countermeasure Bureau. Guess how many times it took me to say that in the script? They are a group that goes around recruiting people with psychic abilities that can range from incredibly useful, such as Hoshizaki's water manipulation ability, to incredibly useless ones, like, I don't know, being able to talk to squirrels. However, the power a psychic gets is the only power they will ever be able to use. They may be able to expand upon the scope of its ability, but they cannot learn any new abilities. Unlike Sasaki, who is unrestricted in his ability to use any kind of magic. The organization must also deal with an opposing faction of rogue psychics called the Irregulars, who believe that their abilities make them the chosen of this world, and as such they should be able to use their powers for their own gain by any means. After hearing all this, Sasaki decides to keep the fact that he is a magic user secret, for fear of what they might do to him if they realize that he is something altogether different. But now he has no choice but to follow Hoshizaki to the organization and become a registered psychic or be treated as a threat. Now Sasaki's adventure in our world as a newbie working for the government begins. But don't worry about his old office worker job. The organization says that they will cover for him, and as far as I can tell, he is no longer working as a salaryman, and is now a full-time secret agent from here on out. This does, however, bring about a new problem, because whenever Sasaki wants to travel to the other world with Peeps, he must tiptoe around his fellow agents who keep track of his every move as a newbie, making sure that no one learns his secret about being a magic user, and to keep Peeps' true identity a secret. At this point, I wouldn't blame you for thinking, wow, this show's got a pretty interesting premise. A guy who could travel between worlds where on one side he's an intelligent, prosperous businessman with magic abilities, and on the other, he's a secret agent helping to keep the peace between others with similar abilities of his own. But, if you thought that's where this was the end of blending anime tropes, you are sorely mistaken. Because, if you remember how I said the organization must deal with an underground war, I bet you were assuming it was with the irregular psychics. And you would be somewhat correct. However, there is another group that all psychics must be wary of if they don't want to end up being blown to pieces in a glorious and adorable explosion of hatred and spite. The enemy of all psychics, the magical girls. You heard me right. The secret government agency full of psychics that people's tax dollars pay for are at war with little girls. Not even of voting age, that have been granted godlike abilities that could wipe Australia off the map. Now you probably want to know what type of magical girls we're dealing with. Are we talking about like the Sailor Moon variety, or are we talking about the Madoka Magica variety? And, well, let's just say they aren't preaching the power of love and friendship while shooting death beams at people in the streets. No, these homicidal heroines are on a mission to end the existence of all psychics on Earth, or at least one of them is. You see, there are actually 7 magical schoolgirls known in existence, and they are created when a fairy from the fairy world, no, not that fairy world, makes contact with them to grant them enough firepower to take on Pearl Harbor. The magical girl we meet throughout this season is known as Magical Pink, and she was the victim of a rogue psychic who killed her whole family and all her friends, leaving her to fend for herself living on the streets and taking food from people's trash cans, dumpsters, and out the backs of supermarkets. But one day she came across a fairy who granted her the power of your average shonen protagonist, a power she used immediately to kill the fairy who granted her this gift, and started wearing its pelt like a goddamn trophy of war. When asked by Sasaki why she did this, the only reply she gave was,
私は魔法少女なんかになりたくなかった。だから殺した。
But that doesn't stop her from using these newly gained powers to cause the organization and irregulars enough trouble that they occasionally need to just let bygones be bygones in order to survive the barrage of seemingly endless spells that Magical Pink can dish out. It is currently unknown if all magical girls are enemies of psychics or just some of them. At one point, when Magical Pink launches a full assault against the organization's headquarters, she comes not by herself, but with one other magical girl by her side. This magical girl is not introduced to us, but by the color of her hair and by the naming pattern, I would assume that she would go by the name Magical Yellow or maybe Magical Blonde. Who's to say? But the fact that she was willing to help Pink leads me to believe that it's likely that all magical schoolgirls are currently enemies of all psychics. Perhaps we'll get more background information on this in the upcoming season of Sasaki and Peeps, but until then we can only speculate, or read the visual novel. But who reads? I don't even know how to read! Okay. With all these different aspects becoming one big amalgamation of anime bullshit for one random 39-year-old guy, you'd think that now we've seen everything that this show will be throwing at us. Well, you'd still be fucking wrong! I haven't even gone over things like the young schoolgirl that lives next door to Sasaki who clearly has a horrible situation at home with abusive parents. She's a character that just sits outside her apartment as her family rages inside without a care or concern for her. The only thing that seems to make this poor girl happy is the brief interaction she has with Sasaki, who kindly offers her food, drinks, and speaks to her with a kindness that she must find as a ray of hope in this otherwise bleak outlook on her life. This girl next door doesn't have many scenes, nor does she have any relevance to the plot of the entire first season, but you can tell that her character will become relevant at some point in the show. The small moments we get of her is that of a love-struck girl pining for the kind-hearted man who looks after her, of one who only wants him to look at her and not have any relation with any other girl or be romantically involved with anyone other than her. Oh, did you think I was going to turn this into a heartwarming situation where Sasaki can help her escape her situation and possibly take care of her? Well, that's a damn shame! This girl shows the classic yandere traits that have me fearing for Sasaki's private life becoming a stereotypical horror/love story, where this girl ends up stalking him and attempting to kill everyone he knows and loves to keep him all to herself. But that would be too easy and what they expect you to think. Because, spoilers if you haven't seen the very end of Season 1, which I know you did because you're all such very good boys and girls, she ends up getting visited by a demon who has seemingly killed her parents and claims that she will now be working for him to fight angels on his behalf. Like what? It's the final seconds of the last episode of Season 1, and you're telling us now that there is another conflict happening that we have no idea about, and that this conflict is in between angels and demons and girls next doors who become demon disciples fighting other angels. Is there anything else that you forgot to tell us? I am a firm believer that this show has no limits as to what it'll put Sasaki through, and that any classic anime situation can and will happen to our boy in the future. God, Season 2 can't arrive any sooner. So, I feel like I've gone over the main point of the show to truly convince someone to watch this fantastic anime soup of nonsense. But not you, because we both know that you already watched the show before we even got into the meat of things. What a good little boy girl you are. However, for those who haven't seen the show, trust me, I still haven't gone over everything that our main man Sasaki and his cutie pie pet Peeps have gone through. There are struggles for friends who've been done wrong, fights that turn foes into allies, sort of, and many young girls vying for Sasaki's attention. But at the beginning of this whole review, I did say that the show can get certain tropes done so well that it can be irritating. This very specific yet big classic anime trope that I absolutely hate when it rears its ugly face in any show, be it anime or not, is the one thing that I can't stand and end up venting about most when I talk about this show. Every single female lead, every possible love interest, anyone with a goddamn vagina is a fucking child. I am getting furious just typing up this script talking about every fucking girl in the show being under the age of 18. Why? Why does Japan do this to me? To us? I guess I shouldn't expect any less from an author who goes by the pen name Bunko Lolly. I see what you are. Look, I have a section in the script that just says free rant section, because I just go off on tangents, but I can't fucking help it. It makes no sense. I thought we were past this as a society, as a people. Why is Japan so obsessed with children? I can't stand it. I can't even take it. I'm like, whew. I get a little heated about this sometimes. I apologize, but let's try to continue, okay? So you probably be like, yo, what about Hoshizaki? She looks like a mature woman who knows how to keep herself in the field. What about her? Well, let me tell you. I also thought that this girl was a baddie. A sexy-looking agent in a secret organization that can fight tooth and nail against other superpowered humans? Sign me up. But the show has the fucking nerve to take this character we had all assumed to be a mature woman with years of experience and then openly palm smack us and say, nah, this chick, she's 16. She only looks and acts like this to try and command respect as one of the youngest agents in the organization. Why? If you wanted to give her some sort of struggle, her just being a female in this field would have been enough, considering that there doesn't seem to be any other female psychics in the organization. Why make her an actual child? Alright, I hear you say, but I saw that there was this one woman in the Irregulars that looked like she may be a child, but her life force draining ability keeps her young, and I hear her age is actually somewhere in the triple digits. What about her? What about her? Exactly! I don't care if this bitch is 12 or 1200. If she looks the part, then I'm putting her at the kiddie table with the other children at Thanksgiving. Just because you say she's older to make yourself feel better about gooning over her as a child character doesn't change the fact that you're still gooning to someone who is an actual child who just happened to have stopped aging. With every other girl in the show, they don't even try to justify the situation. Just girls who are just unabashedly under the age of consent fawning over our, let me remind you, 39-year-old protagonist. But you know what? You gotta respect our man Sasaki, because he is having none of this with these kids. In all honesty, I wouldn't even say there's any real romance in this show, because Sasaki has never once made an attempt to advance on any of these thirsty minors. He doesn't even get flustered or trip over himself in front of them. No, Sasaki does what he does best and uses his business-like speaking skills to either brush them aside or outright deny them. And this is why I do still love the show. Sasaki and Peeps' shortcomings aside, I really love this show. The sudden yet seamless manner it takes the story from one idea to the next is as jarring as it is hilarious. And regardless of whatever your taste is, I'm sure that Sasaki and Peeps has a flavor of anime for you to enjoy. Plus, with Season 2 coming sometime in 2026 this year, you won't need to wait too long to get another bite out of it. With all these things that can still be added to the show, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more classic tropes occur. Possibly even in the other world. Maybe some random high school kids will get isekai to Peeps' homeland and try to help with the war, only for Sasaki to show up with his magic bird to whip all their asses. Maybe he even brings them back home using Peeps' world travel ability. Just imagine, being sent to another world and being told you're the only ones who could help save everyone, only to get by an average-looking middle-aged man and his sparrow. I would love to see more ridiculous things like this in the show, but I suppose we'll have to wait until Season 2 decides to grace us with its presence. Alright, thanks for sticking around to hear a middle-aged man rant about another middle-aged man. Now go watch Sasaki and Peeps again. I know you must love it having already watched it just to listen to me talk about it. As for a rating, I guess I would give Sasaki and Peeps an 8.5 out of 10. Just on the potential alone, this show is definitely something to keep your eye on.